Okay, I found myself earlier today realizing that I had forgotten to reamp a very small little guitar part in a song I'm mixing from the new Necromancing TheStone debut album coming out on Metal Blade Records in a couple months. And it's just a small, simple little melody bit. It's, overdubbed on top of the main rhythm guitars. And because of that, I wanted it to have its own unique tone and character. So the first thing I did was pull out a different amp than was used for the rhythms, which was a really cool orange augmented by an EVH 5150 Mark III. And so for this overdub, I decided to use a PV 6505 Plus, and it's just on the lead channel, the red channel, with the gain only up at about 4, pre there. So that sort of yields a not too overly distorted, gainy sound. Let's have a listen. I apologize for the sound from the phone mic. I am not a video production studio, and I just don't have time to go in after and post and add those things. Not currently while I'm mixing a record anyway, so apologies for that. But originally, this tone sounded like this, which is obviously not as loud as the new sound, but also it sounds fairly distant. You can hear a lot of room in there, and I wanted a much more upfront, direct sound, which you can hear as soon as I put that in input. Original, new sound. So sounds much more direct and in your face. I also wanted to make that a little more chewy, give it a little more bite, and for that purpose I pulled out this Greenhouse Effects double-edged pedal. And this is a very cool pedal made by Greenhouse Effects. It is a signature pedal of my buddy Carl August Tiedemann, who has played over the years with bands like Arcturus and Winds, and his new band, which I'm not recalling, so he's probably going to kill me, but I'll add it in the notes probably. Yeah, this is a really great pedal. The cool thing about it is that, I keep getting a shadow here, and I apologize for that. Like I said, definitely not a video production studio here. Anyway, the premise of this pedal is it has 2 different gain channels. And you can set them independently. They're also voiced differently. And you can set the gain for each one, and you flip back and forth between them. Now we'll call that one, yellow and red. But yellow is kind of like, also call it rhythm, and the red lead, whatever. It doesn't matter. Yellow and red, and yellow is intended a little bit more for rhythms, and red a little bit more for, the needs of modern solo playing. I would think, but you can use them any way you want to. This is the bypass, and this switches between the channels. Now, they share a common volume and a common tone. They're already voiced very differently, so they don't really need independent tone controls. You can find a setting that's good for both, suits your taste for both, and the inherent differences between the 2 channels, are enough otherwise. Also, volume too. It's the red channel has a little bit more apparent volume than the yellow. The tone control itself is very subtle anyway, so yeah, that's about the story with that, but let's have a little listen to it. I opted for a sound on the yellow channel, and I'll just engage that. Pretty happy with that. And now then, let's move on to the other pedals. But first, I want to show off this thing. This is a new piece for me, and I'm loving it. It is saving me mountains of batteries. That's just the most recent ones I've peeled through. And I've gone through so many over the years in my pedals that I probably could have bought 100 of these things. But this is the MXR Iso-Brick, which is very obviously a foot pedal power supply It provides mostly 9-volt outputs, but it also has two 18-volt outputs, which is great because this EVH flanger requires that. And it also has two variable output. This little control right here, that is the variable voltage. I think it goes from about 6 volts up to like 15. There's another one right down there. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, there you go. And they control the output of the jack they're most immediately, the output jack that they're most immediately near, the power output. And so you can get variable there. I got them set to 9 volt right now, but I don't have anything in them, so it doesn't matter. I'm using one of the 18 volt ones and three of the 9 volt outputs because I'm powering also an MXR EVH Phase 90, as well as the double edged, and over here an ISP decimator for noise reduction. So yeah, it's an MXR piece, but it'll power not only MXR pedals, but pedals by other manufacturers as well. And so I fooled around with this guy first, the MXR Phase 90, to try to get a little interesting character for this part, something to help it sort of sit in its own space in the track, in the mix, and also have something that extra to sort of help it stand out a little bit. And I fooled around with this Phase 90 here, and the EVH Phase 90 is really cool because it's like a typical Phase 90. And there's two different versions of that. Most people know the bold letter and the scripted with the letters in script Phase 90. And the version with script is a little bit more of a vintage sound. I think sort of the sweep, the phase sweep, is a little softer. You can go just as fast, but it's maybe not quite as wide, or at least doesn't have quite the hard return off each of the extremes of the sweep. And that's what you get when you press the script button in. You get that old vintage style. And when you pull it out, you get the block letter style, a little bit more wide, a little bit harder, flashier return. And let's hear that first with script out in the more modern setting. And now with script in. Yeah. And that brings me to my other option that I set up, which is the EVH Flanger, which has a really cool feature I'm about to point out. I opted for these settings in the end, and not to use them both at the same time, but to choose between one or the other for this part. The really cool thing about the EVH Flanger is it has this setting called the EVH button, and when you engage it, it doesn't matter what it bypasses the knob controls up there. It basically just sets it to a preset, which is essentially the Van Halen Unchained flanger sound, that iconic flanger sound that Eddie has on his guitar at the beginning of the song Unchained from the Fair Warning album. And it's really, really cool. Here, this part being nothing like Unchained, you won't really be able to tell as much, but take it out and it's back to much more subtle settings that I had. And I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. I'll choose one or the other and use it for both tracks of this part, which are going to be panned out in the mix. Or I might just use it on one and not the other. Or I might mix and match. Who knows? Haven't made up my mind yet. But that's what I'm going to do now. So I'm turning off the video to get to that. And again, sorry for the sound. I don't have time to open this up in an editor and put in pristine tracks, so it's just the iPhone mic, unfortunately. But I hope you enjoyed it anyway, and take care.